For years, Edd China was the calm, steady genius at the workbench on Wheeler Dealers. He was the one who made what looked like impossible repairs appear effortless, turning seized bolts, worn engines, and broken parts into something that worked again. Then, almost without warning, he was gone. Fans were stunned when Edd released a video message saying, "I'm afraid it's true, and I'm really sorry. After 13 years of making Wheeler Dealers, I'm now going to be leaving the show." With that, he vanished from television. This is the story of what happened after Edd walked away, retreating into his workshop, quietly building something no one had seen coming. And when people finally looked inside Edd China's garage, what they found was stranger than fiction, something that would leave fans completely speechless in March 2017. Edd shocked the automotive world when he announced his departure from Wheeler Dealers, the long-running series that had become one of the most beloved car restoration shows in television history. For over a decade, Edd had been the heart of the program. His tall frame, affable nature, calm voice, and detailed explanations had made him stand out. Viewers trusted him as he guided them through complex mechanical repairs, step by step. While Mike Brewer handled the buying and selling side of things, Edd's workshop segments were what gave the show its soul. Fans didn't just see before and after shots of a car. They were shown the entire process, the nuts, bolts, quirks, and clever workarounds that turned a tired vehicle into something fresh and roadworthy again. That transparency and respect for craftsmanship became a cornerstone of Wheeler Dealers' identity. But by 2017, change was brewing. Discovery Channel announced that the production would move from the UK to the United States under a new production company. Along with the shift came a new vision for the showless time on in-depth workshop details and more streamlined edits for faster pacing. Edd didn't agree with this approach. In his departure video, which drew millions of views within days, he explained calmly but firmly why he was leaving. Cutting back on the detailed repair footage, he said, would rob the show of its educational value and integrity. Without that transparency, the series risked becoming just another form of superficial entertainment, instead of a true documentation of car restoration. For Edd, that was a line he couldn't cross. Rather than compromise, he chose to walk away. Reports later revealed that tensions had been building behind the scenes for months. The production move also meant a shift in priorities from in-depth mechanical detail to broader mass appeal. From its UK roots to a polished American version, Edd, who had always built his on-screen persona on openness, education, and hands-on authenticity, didn't see himself fitting into that new future. The news caught fans completely off guard. Social media exploded with reactions, some angry, some supportive, but most of all, heartbroken. Too many, Edd wasn't just a co-host. He was the soul of Wheeler Dealers. His quiet authority and ability to teach while he worked made him one of the rare TV mechanics viewers truly believed. Mike Brewer responded publicly, saying he was saddened by Edd's decision but would continue the show with a new co-host, former Formula One mechanic Ant Anstead. Still, everyone knew Wheeler Dealers wouldn't be the same. The chemistry between Mike and Edd had taken years to build. It couldn't be replicated overnight. Edd himself didn't lash out or stir controversy. He avoided blame and explained his decision with composure. But his message was clear: the show that had once allowed him to do meaningful work was no longer a place where he could stay. True to his values, leaving wasn't without consequences. According to reports in The Sun and Metro, both Edd and Mike received backlash from viewers, some of it harsh, unfair, and even vitriolic. Edd later admitted that while he stood firmly by his choice, the backlash was difficult. He described the decision as sad, but necessary. For someone who valued quality and authenticity above all else, there was no turning back, and then he disappeared. For almost a year after leaving Wheeler Dealers, Edd went silent. No TV appearances, no major announcements, no new projects in the public eye. Fans were left wondering, what happened to him? Was he burned out? Had he walked away from television forever? Edd's absence was strange because he had always been such a visible figure in the automotive world. Not just through the show, but also at public events, interviews, and car meets across the UK. When updates stopped, speculation filled the void. Some thought he'd quit TV for good. Others believed he was secretly working on something big. What little we know about that period reveals something important. Edd hadn't vanished completely, he had simply retreated inward, back to his workshop. This was the same garage where he had once created quirky inventions like the motorized office chair and the street-legal sofa. This time, however, there were no cameras, no production deadlines, no scripts, just tools, sketches, and freedom. Those close to Edd described this time as a recharge. After years of strict TV schedules and the pressures of production, he finally had room to breathe and create at his own pace. He wasn't idle. Far from it. He was tinkering, experimenting, solving problems for the sheer joy of engineering again. Many of his ideas, some dating back to before Wheeler Dealers, were dusted off and re-explored. Whispers emerged that he might be working on electric vehicle conversions specifically, ways to retrofit classic cars with modern electric drivetrains, while preserving their original charm. Though unconfirmed, this rumor fit perfectly with Edd's passion for sustainability and alternative power. Fans speculated endlessly online, wondering if he was preparing to unveil something revolutionary. Meanwhile, Edd's social media went quiet. His Twitter stopped. His YouTube channel lay dormant. For someone once so open with fans, the silence felt eerie. Occasionally, fans reported spotting him at engineering shows or classic car events, fueling even more speculation. Was he scouting ideas? Testing inventions? Recruiting collaborators? No one really knew, and Edd wasn't saying. The longer the silence stretched, the more mysterious it became. People began to sense that Edd wasn't just resting, he was incubating something. And by 2018, hints began to surface. A few cryptic blog posts, subtle mentions in interviews, the promise of something new. In May 2018, the silence finally broke. Edd returned not on traditional TV, but on his own terms. It's through a self-produced YouTube series called Edd China's Garage Revival. No flashy marketing. No overhyped campaigns, just a video quietly titled Garage Revival, Episode 1. The concept was refreshingly pure. Instead of working on cars for resale, Edd sought out everyday people who had started restoration projects but couldn't finish them. These weren't million-dollar builds, they were personal, often emotional projects that had stalled due to money, time, or skill. Edd stepped in, working alongside the owners in their own garages to bring these cars back to life. It wasn't just about fixing engines, it was about restoring dreams. The show tapped into the human side of car culture, the frustration of unfinished projects, the passion tied to every greasy bolt, and the joy of finally seeing something completed. The very first episode featured a classic. VW Golf GTI abandoned halfway through its rebuild. The owner had done everything he could with limited tools and knowledge, but eventually hit a wall. Edd arrived, rolled up his sleeves, and got to work. There was no TV drama. No shortcuts, just Edie on the floor, getting his hands dirty, explaining every step with his trademark clarity. That authenticity became the hallmark of Garage Revival. It wasn't about spectacle. It was about honesty, craft, and connection. There were no flashy voiceovers, no dramatic background tracks, and no studio gimmicks. Just a camera, a car, and Edd China doing what he has always done best, breaking down complex mechanical issues into plain, understandable English. If a brake line had seized, he calmly demonstrated the process of freeing it. If a gearbox had slipped out of sync, he explained not only the steps to fix it, but also the internal logic of why the system worked the way it did. For longtime fans who had dearly missed his deep dive repair segments on Wheeler Dealers, this new format felt like a homecoming. The production values were intentionally modest. Edd was no longer supported by the machinery of a television studio. There were no executives shaping the content, no producers hovering over his shoulder, and no strict deadlines forcing him to rush a repair. This time, he had complete creative control, writing, presenting, and even taking part in the editing process. It wasn't polished television, but that was never the goal. What it offered was something far more valuable: authenticity. The audience responded immediately. Within just days of the first episode's release, views shot into the hundreds of thousands. The comments section became a reunion of sorts, with fans welcoming him back, thanking him for staying true to his roots, and expressing relief that his passion had not been dulled by his fallout with the industry. Some viewers even declared that the series surpassed Wheeler Dealers. It felt more personal, more relatable, and more focused on the why behind every repair, rather than just the how behind the scenes. The launch of Garage Revival served as a critical test. According to industry insiders, Edd himself had been uncertain about whether he even wanted to step back into the public eye. YouTube gave him the perfect middle ground, freedom without long-term obligations. Over the next few months, new episodes steadily followed. One week it was a proud Triumph restoration. The next, a neglected Land Rover pulled back to life. These stories unfolded slowly, with no shortcuts, no flashy editing, and no music montages covering up the hard work. Every stubborn bolt, every improvised fix, every unexpected snag was shown for what it really was. It was the kind of work any weekend mechanic could recognize instantly. That honesty was the key to why Garage Revival resonated so strongly. It wasn't about perfection. But Perseverance. Edd wasn't instructing viewers on how to build glamorous show cars. He was showing them how to finally tackle that one job sitting half-finished in their garage, the one they had been putting off for months. In doing so, he recaptured the spirit of hands-on, educational motoring content, something that mainstream automotive media had been steadily abandoning. It's important to note that Garage Revival didn't turn into a sprawling media empire, and it didn't need to. It was never about creating a massive franchise. Instead, it was a personal project, a way for Edd to do what he loved on his own terms. For fans, it sent a clear message. Edd hadn't vanished. He had simply taken a detour. By the close of 2018, he had proved beyond doubt that he didn't need the safety net of a big-budget studio to stay relevant. All he needed was a camera, a project worth finishing, and a reason to roll up his sleeves. With Garage Revival, the workshop lights were switched back and in this time. Every corner of the garage was entirely his own. Not long after, a rare private tour of Edd's personal garage was arranged, and what visitors discovered inside was astonishing. Behind unmarked doors, past a cluttered driveway, and shelves stacked with forgotten car parts, was the place where Edd had been quietly building his own world for years. The moment you stepped in, it was hard to know where to look first. Against one wall sat his infamous street-legal sofa, bizarre yet brilliant creations stitched together from armchairs, suspension parts, and pure eccentric imagination. Nearby stood the motorized bathroom, a fully functional toilet mounted on wheels, complete with plumbing and a steering system. These weren't just comedic gimmicks. They were real, fully registered vehicles that had once toured public streets. Proof of what happens when engineering meets creativity without limits. But among the whimsical marvels, one discovery stood out, and not for the right reasons. Hidden away in a dim back corner was the remains of an abandoned prototype, something that had clearly gone wrong. It was a self-steering bar stool, an experimental design meant to explore compact personal mobility using gyroscopic stabilization. Yet the project sat in a disturbing state of failure. Wires dangled from scorched control boxes. Black burn marks stained the plywood beneath. A charred lithium battery housing suggested that a dangerous fire had nearly broken out. Witnesses described it as though the machine had tried to cook itself alive. Thankfully, no injuries were reported, but the evidence left little doubt. Edd had narrowly avoided a serious workshop disaster. For someone known for his calm precision and careful engineering, this was a rare glimpse into the risks that relentless innovation carries. But as one insider put it, this was entirely fitting. Edd's garage was not simply a playground. It was a laboratory. He never filtered his ideas, he followed them all the way through. Some became brilliant, road-legal marvels, while others, like the barstool experiment, failed spectacularly in testing. Yet each prototype, even the charred and broken ones,
told the same story.
The restless mind of a man who refuses to stop building. This was the side of Edd the public rarely sees. At heart, he is a solitary inventor, surrounded by projects that balance on the fine line between genius and madness. And if some of those ideas leave behind a scorch mark or two, it only proves how far he is willing to go to create something no one else would dare attempt. After the modest but heartfelt success of Garage Revival, Edd China stood at a crossroads. He had shown that he could succeed on his own, proving that his reputation, knowledge, and authenticity were enough to carry a show without network backing. But reinvention for Edd wasn't just about returning to screen, it was about evolving his entire role in the automotive world. His time away from mainstream television had given him space to rethink his priorities. Not only as a presenter, but as an engineer. While the public mostly remembered him as the eccentric mechanic from Wheeler Dealers, Edd had quietly been exploring new ideas for years, long before electric vehicles dominated headlines. He was already tinkering with sustainable transport, experimenting with hybrid retrofits, and sketching out alternative drivetrains. Now, with complete control over his platform, he could finally take those experiments public. In April 2021, Edd launched Edd China's Workshop Diaries, a new YouTube series that carried forward the spirit of his earlier work, but with a broader vision. Unlike Garage Revival, which focused on helping others finish their stalled projects, Workshop Diaries took viewers directly into Edd's own garage. This was his private workshop, his personal universe of tools, projects, and prototypes. The episodes ranged from 20 to 40 minutes, covering everything from engine teardowns to electric vehicle component analysis. But what made the series truly stand out was its tone. It wasn't glossy or adrenaline-fueled like TV car shows. It was thoughtful, intimate, and deliberately paced. Edd spoke to the camera as though he were chatting with an old friend, explaining not just the what, but the why behind each step. One early highlight was the electric conversion of a classic Mini. Far from being a gimmick, it was Edd's way of proving that electrification didn't have to strip a car of its charm. He showed viewers how to adapt motor mounts, select battery packs, and wire control units, all while preserving the soul of the beloved vehicle. As the series grew, its scope expanded. Some episodes leaned back into traditional restoration suspension rebuilds, gearbox troubleshooting, fuel system repairs. Others took on forward-thinking projects, like experimenting with lightweight recycled body panels or retrofitting regenerative braking into older cars. Occasionally, Edd even showcased his homemade tools or dedicated entire sessions to answering questions submitted by fans. With no advertisers or sponsors dictating the agenda, every episode was driven purely by curiosity and craftsmanship. The response was overwhelmingly positive. Fans praised his calm explanations, his unmatched technical knowledge, and the comforting pace of the series. Many said watching Workshop Diaries felt like learning from a mentor in their own garage. On a deeper level, it also carried an emotional undercurrent. Viewers could sense that Edd had taken time to heal after leaving Wheeler Dealers. There was no bitterness, just quiet confidence and renewed passion. For him, the series seemed almost therapeutic. Slow but steady way of reclaiming his voice on his own terms. By its second year, Workshop Diaries had grown far beyond a simple YouTube channel. It had evolved into a genuine community where engineers, hobbyists, and classic car lovers came together. Occasionally, Edd invited guest friends from the industry or former collaborators, but the focus never drifted. It remained a one-man mission about honest work, thoughtful engineering, and meaningful innovation. Edd China's legacy is now clear. His journey highlights something often forgotten in a fast-moving industry: the value of staying true to your principles. He could have stayed on Wheeler Dealers, collecting a comfortable paycheck and conforming to a flashier, watered-down version of himself, but he chose the harder path. He walked away because the process mattered more than the product, because the how was just as important as the what. That decision earned him not just respect, but a reputation for integrity in an industry where compromise is common. Today, Edd continues to produce Workshop Diaries, still exploring new technologies, still answering the kinds of questions that other shows ignore. For every teenager picking up a wrench for the first time, for every mechanic battling a seized bolt in their garage, For every engineer wondering if it's possible to blend the past with a cleaner, greener future, Edd is there, calm, patient, and endlessly curious. His presence online has become mentorship at scale. Proof that craftsmanship and engineering are still about patience, problem solving, and purpose.